This is Laura. Laura she first started with the group, we were just trying to figure it out. It was like at least 5 years ago. And she moved through and achieved well, you'll see. She'll talk about her story, about how wonderful experience it was for her to be a part of the group, and how she's evolved as a young woman and dealing with her own demons, and where she is today. And she's accomplished a great deal. I'm so proud of her achievements and what she's done. And you're going to hear about that. But Laura's been coming back to the group twice a year for at least the last 3 or 4 years now. She's done quite a number of these presentations. If you're ever interested, she'll probably refer you to her page, and she's got a number of them that are online. And I'm sure Dad is going to put another one up there pretty soon.
Yeah.
So without further ado, Laura, thank you for coming back.
So, as Dan said, my name is Laura, and I'm currently in my 3rd year at Western University doing a BSc in Psych. So I had a pretty normal childhood. I had a couple of really close friends, did well in school, did all the normal childhood things except for sports. When I began grade 5, it was a really exciting year for me because I was looking forward to venturing into the unknown world of middle school and leaving the endless rules of elementary school behind. But I started having nightly stomach aches, and these weren't like normal stomach aches that I'd had before. I was in constant pain at night, keeping my parents and myself awake for most of the night. So after the stomachs didn't go away, my parents took me to a doctor who put me through all the tests imaginable, and after they all came back normal, I was referred to a psychiatrist here at Credit Valley who diagnosed me with severe anxiety and referred me to see a therapist. So this was a huge moment in my life because it made everything make sense. The overthinking, the inability to sleep, the constant fear, all the jumbled emotions I'd felt all my life, it all made sense. I started seeing a therapist and learned some basic coping strategies for how to deal with my anxiety. I started to feel better and thought that this phase of my life was over and I could move on. Little did I know that this battle would become a lifelong one. So I've always been a very caring person and I love helping people. And there's nothing wrong with this, but I've yet to learn how to care for friends without allowing their problems to take a toll on my mental health. The last Friday of March break, when I was in grade 8, I got a long text from one of my really good friends. It was full of nice things about me and talked about all the great things that I was going to do with the rest of my life. It seemed like a goodbye. I'm aware that not all of you are spiritual or religious, and feel free to believe whatever you like, but after I read her text, I heard a voice. I believe it was God, but you don't have to. The voice said overdose over and over and didn't stop until I asked my friend if she'd overdosed. She said she had, but then I didn't know what to do. The voice came back and said, ask her what she took. I did, and after a little persistence, she told me and I wrote it down. The voice came back one last time and said, call 911. I walked down to my parents, told them what was going on, and they helped me inform the authorities. I've never heard this voice since. This was a huge turning point in my life for many reasons. I experienced firsthand how a suicide attempt can affect family and friends, and I told myself that no matter what, I wouldn't put my family and friends through that. I also realized how important life is. Some of you may have struggled with suicidal thoughts, maybe even attempted to end your life. I was on the other side. I was that friend that you would have left heartbroken. In the moment, it seems like ending it is the only possible option, but please hear me when I say that it isn't. A permanent solution is never the answer to a temporary problem. So after this, I started seeing Dan because I began having panic attacks. I'd be lying in bed trying to fall asleep and my heart would start racing, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't see properly, my hands and legs would begin to shake uncontrollably. I thought I was dying. Dan taught me lots of coping strategies to help with when I would get these panic attacks. And one that I found really helpful is box breathing, where you breathe in for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, and then pause for 4. Now this probably isn't going to work, but there are a bunch of GIFs online that you can follow that can help regulate your breathing. If you just Google breathing GIFs or GIFs, I still am not sure. But they're really helpful. I love music, and I find singing my favorite songs during a panic attack really helps as well. Not only does it distract me and bring me into a more positive mental state, but by singing, my breathing is regulated and it forces me to take deeper breaths. I got my panic attacks and anxiety under control, and I began grade 9 at Port Credit Secondary School. I started at a high school that's a 35-minute drive away from home where I knew no one. This was terrifying for me. I still remember that first day sitting in my mom's van, absolutely petrified. But something deep down told me that walking into this school would be the best thing that would ever happen to me. That was an understatement. Sometimes the scariest things turn out to have the greatest rewards. Facing my fear of starting at a brand new school was terrifying, but I had some of the best years of my life at high school. Grade 9 turned out to be an amazing year. I made great friends and met excellent teachers. I was doing amazing in my courses, and I couldn't be happier. The summer went by, and as September drew nearer, my panic attacks started becoming more frequent and more severe than they ever had been before. I'd be having hour or 2 hour long panic attacks every night, and for those of you who are familiar with panic attacks, you understand when I say that that was exhausting. I pretended like it wasn't a big deal because I didn't want to go back to therapy. I thought that was a sign of weakness. My mom also suggested maybe I was just extra anxious because school was starting up again. So I started grade 10 and things were different. My marks weren't what they used to be. I had zero motivation to do any homework. I began to obsess over my weight, restricted myself to less than 1,000 calories a day, and lost 15 pounds over the span of about 2 months. And in December, my whole world lost color. It used to be full of the most vibrant colors, and it became shades of gray and black. I couldn't find joy in anything that used to make me happy. I had no desire to talk to anyone, do any homework, go to school, listen or play music, or do anything. So Christmas break arrived, and I didn't leave my bed. I binge-watched Grey's Anatomy for 10 hours every day, not leaving my bed to eat. One morning, I remember it was close to noon, and I still hadn't gotten out of bed yet. So my mom came into my room, took my covers off, and dragged me by my feet off my bed and onto the floor. I had never been so mad at anyone in my life. That was rock bottom for me. Who would I become? I was mad at my mom for dragging me out of bed. I used to have such ambitious goals for my life, and now I couldn't even get out of bed. As much as I didn't like admitting it, I knew that it was time to go to Dan again. It was terrifying and I wasn't happy about it, but I knew that I didn't want to live my life like that anymore. A few sessions with Dan wasn't helping, and I was spiraling deeper and deeper into a dark hole that I feared I would never be able to climb out of. So I told my parents I felt I needed something more than just therapy, so we went to my family doctor to discuss medications. I began antidepressants, and while I waited for them to kick in, Dan told me about this run group. He had mentioned it to me a couple of times over the few weeks I'd begun seeing him, and I refused to tell my parents. I've never been an active person and sure didn't plan on being one. I guess he clued in I hadn't mentioned anything to my parents, so he told them instead. Typical. As to be expected, my mom and dad thought it was a great idea. I continued to actively protest the idea of run group, but I really liked Lululemon, so mom convinced me to do the run group because I get to buy some new clothes. The first few weeks were awful. I hated my parents for making me go. I hated Dan for having the idea of this run group. Everything about it was awful. After a few weeks, I started to enjoy it a little bit, but I sure as heck was not going to let anyone know. Eventually, I couldn't deny the improvements anymore. The run group was becoming a key part of my recovery. Everything from the speakers that I could relate to the simple knowledge that everyone in the room understood what I was going through and wouldn't judge me changed my perspective on life. Oh. Okay. Well, we're just going to skip us a couple slides then. I guess we'll just get us to listen. When I ran the runway run in June 2014, at the end of my first session of Run Group, my first 5K, I couldn't have been prouder of myself. I've now completed 6, potentially 7 sessions of the Run Group, and every time it's a new experience and I grow so much from it. Being a coach was one of the most rewarding experiences. I loved seeing so many new people start where I was at the beginning of the session, and by the end they've improved so much, it's amazing. Congrats to all of you for making it this far. I know it sounds crazy because you don't know me and I don't know you, but I'm so proud of you. I know as a participant in the group, I really appreciated hearing the different strategies that the speakers had to share. I wanted to try everything, hoping that I'd be able to find the perfect concoction of strategies that would work for me. I find that some days certain strategies will work and other days different ones will work. Like Dan always talks about, it's better to have lots of tools in your toolbox that you can pick from. I find that when my brain is going overtime and I can't stop thinking about a million things at once, writing it down really helps. I write in a journal, but also sometimes I type it out in a blog post. There's something so powerful about getting your thoughts out of your head and onto paper. Once it's on paper, I tell myself, okay, Laura, you've gotten it all out, you can move on now. Like I mentioned earlier, music is a huge way for me to take control of my mental state. We all have certain music that makes us happy. For me, it's music like old school Taylor Swift or Adele, but for others it could be someone like Bob Marley. Honestly, whatever works for you. If I'm in a dark place and I just can't shake it, I'll put on my happy music and let it work its magic. I'm stubborn and sometimes I try to stay in that dark place, but when that music comes on, I can't fight the joy that follows. I have struggled a lot with being unable to fall asleep, and many physicians won't agree with this method, but it works for me, so I'll share it anyways. I like to watch Netflix or YouTube before bed because it helps distract me, and I think about what I'm watching instead of the hundreds of thoughts in my head. I used to struggle a lot with my mind going crazy at night and stressing me out, so by watching a video, I forget what I'm thinking about. The blue light from technology does inhibit sleep, and I get that, so now I just put on a show and then put my phone face down on my night table, so I'm just listening to it. iPhones, and I'm pretty sure Android too, have the option to put your phone on nighttime mode, which reduces the blue light emissions, so that can be helpful if you're on your phone late at night as well. I think getting to know yourself and your own mental health is also really important. Take the time to notice what triggers you, what sets you off, what makes you happy, what makes you sad, all that stuff. For me, I've learned over the years that as much as I'd love to not have a plan for anything and be a go-with-the-flow kind of gal, that just does not work for me. I thrive on having a schedule. When school ends for March break or Christmas break or the summer, I struggle because my schedule has been interrupted. To prevent myself from not doing anything and sinking into a depressed mood, I make a schedule. I make a to-do list in the morning when I wake up of all the things I'm going to do that day. Sometimes my to-do list consists of get out of bed, get dressed, eat breakfast, because that's all I can accomplish in a day. And that's okay. Even if to someone else that isn't much, just checking off those simple tasks lets me be proud of myself. Doing this gives my day a purpose. Try giving yourself a purpose each day for a month and see how much more efficient and motivated you are. Exercise and going to the gym is still a huge part of my life. I find that if I miss the gym for more than 2 or 3 days, I can't think straight and I begin to feel myself lost in a fog called anxiety and depression. I find running outside to be the most effective way to maintain my sanity, but in London, Ontario, we're still being bombarded by snow, so I settle for running on the treadmill, going to the elliptical, or even doing workouts in my room at home. On days when I don't have the mental or physical energy to get myself up to go to the gym, I like to go on a nighttime walk. If I'm by myself, I'll listen to a motivational podcast like The Happiness Project by Gretchen Rubin, or an audiobook that you can download for free as long as you have a library card. A nighttime walk is an amazing way to clear your mind and is a nice way to get some fresh air before going to sleep. I briefly want to touch on the fact that all of us coaches and speakers up here, we all have bad days too. Just because we're up here telling our stories doesn't mean we figured this all out. I attempted to come off my meds a few summers ago because I was in a great place, but in the fall my anxiety began to come back and I couldn't get my panic attacks under control. I ignored it for as long as I could because I didn't want to admit to myself that I had relapsed, for lack of a better word. I thought that going back on meds would show weakness because I couldn't do it on my own. Thankfully, I have amazing friends and family that recognize when I'm slipping and they encourage me to go back on my meds. And I'm so glad I did because I became myself again. I still have bad days now, but do you want to know something crazy? People who aren't struggling with their mental health have bad days too. It's just part of life. So, for example, last year I thought I would do my makeup and get ready for a fun night with my friends, but I ended up having a panic attack instead, and this is what I looked like at the end of the night. So I still get discouraged and feel like my life is over after having one bad day. Mental health is a journey, there's no final destination. Learning to live with mental health problems is all about getting help when you need it. It's hard to go back and get help again, especially after you've spent so long thinking that you've got it all under control. But it's okay, it happens to us all, we all get it. And that's one of the amazing things about this group. Everyone in this room gets it. So I want to touch on briefly what I mentioned earlier about having amazing friends that notice when I was slipping. So I can't stress enough how important it is to have a few friends that you can trust and that will support you no matter what. Not everyone you meet is going to be a mental health ally. They won't all understand. But I have amazing friends that realize they don't know what I'm going through, but support me in the best way they can, and that means so much to me. Parents, sometimes you want to be the #1 support in your teen's life, which is amazing. But sometimes you have to realize that teens need peer support as well. If a friend tells me something and my mom tells me the exact same thing, I'm far more likely to listen to my friend than my mom. Now, as I've gotten older, I began to appreciate my mom's advice much more, but when I was in high school, that was a whole different story. It's so important to know that you have people other than your parents who are there for you. I've called my best friend many times in the middle of the night, and she's always there for me. However, as important as it is to make good friends that you can be vulnerable and honest with, you don't want to tell your deepest, darkest secrets to everyone you meet. It's important to be selective with who you tell, because I've told too much to the wrong people, and when I turn to them for support, they don't give me any, and that can be really hurtful. It's hard work to find people who will be good supports for you, but I really believe that there's at least one person in all of our lives who always has our back. So there aren't as many parents in this group as there has been in the past, but for the few parents that are here, I'm going to talk to you for a quick second. So I know this is called the Teen Run Group, but it's not all about us as much as it may seem like it. Now that I'm in a better mental place, I can see how much our struggles affect you, the parents. The dark place many of us are in is a very self-centered place, and we're often unable to take into account your feelings. It doesn't mean we don't love or care about you and the rest of our family, but sometimes it takes every cell in our body to stay alive and make it through the day. We don't have energy to spare to care about you or your feelings in the way that you might like us to. I was talking to my mom about my bad depression in grade 10, and she was telling me things that happened, and I honestly don't remember most of it. I've blocked out that part of my life, so I can only imagine how nasty I was to my family. It's important for you as the parents to take care of yourselves. Don't let us, the kids, be everything to you. You need to take care of your mental health as well. We're struggling. If you take our problems and make them your own, that won't help either of us. It's hard to isolate yourself from someone else's problems, but it's super important. For me, as cynical as it may sound, I say that's a you problem, not a me problem. And it works. It allows me to have empathy for what someone's going through, but not become personally affected by it. This is important for the teens as well. Many of us feel emotions deeply, and when someone we care about tells us something they're struggling with, we often feel their pain just as strongly as they do. This isn't a bad thing, but it becomes a negative thing when it begins to affect our own mental health. Figure out a way that works for you to isolate their problems from your own. You can still care about them, but don't let their problems affect you. So Hawaii is one of my all-time favorite places in the world, and I was lucky enough to get to go there with my family for my 16th birthday. On our last full day on the island, I went surfing. As you can see, the waves in Lake Ontario are bigger than the ones I surfed, but that day of surfing changed my life. For those of you who have never been, you spend most of your time underwater, being pushed around by the waves, getting whacked in the face by a surfboard, unsure of where the surface is and if you'll ever find your way back up. But you always do. You always find your way back up to the surface, you take a deep breath, and you look for the next wave. And then you get up, and you stand tall and confident, and you catch that wave. And all that time being tossed around under the water was worth it. It was worth the pain and fear of being underwater for that moment of freedom and pure joy. And that's kind of how life is. You spend a lot of time unsure if you'll ever make it out of the turbulent stuff that life is throwing at you. But then something magical happens, and you're able to catch your breath and stand up and experience joy. And just like surfing, you fall, you go back underwater, but you always get up again. I want to encourage you today that no matter what part of your mental health journey you're in, that you're important, you're loved, you're worth it, and you deserve all the joy in the world. So as Dan mentioned, I upload my talks onto YouTube, so if you'd like to rewatch parts, you can search for Laura Paradi on YouTube tomorrow, and my channel and all my videos and past speeches will pop up. Feel free to stick around and ask me any questions, or you can send me a message on Facebook later if you have questions that come up later. Thank you.
plow, eh? I mean,
Talk about a presentation that covers everything from A to B, and I so appreciate that you covered pretty much everything, you know, because we do have a lot of young people who come in, just like you, and they're going, why am I going here? Why am this is not just, I hate running, this is not a good thing for me. And then how you evolved. Why? I think it took about like 3 weeks at least before we started to get into it. And then the other powerful thing about Laura's talk is the vulnerability. How she talks about, you know, being humble and open to other alternatives, like taking medication, talking about that and how that made a difference, and that, you know, like feeling good and coming off and then having to go back on it again, and really making that point, which is really, really important, guys, is that no matter how good we feel when we get on top of things in our lives, we can still have bad days. We can still have bad weeks. This is something that is often a lifelong journey, you know, and it's really, really important to focus in on those basic fundamentals of how do we master today. We can't control what happened yesterday or what's going to happen tomorrow. But when you apply some of these strategies like Laura's talking about, being present, box breathing, brain brushing, you know, being in connection with good friends that are going to support you, healthy living, you know, working out. Look at this as a girl who hated running, and now she's running all the time and she's working out. And so this is my research project come to fruition. So great. So anyways, with great appreciation, Laura, thanks again. And I like how you tweaked it more. Every time she adds a little bit more, and so it's great. So I really appreciate it. Thanks so much. Yeah. Anybody have any questions?
Laura?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, you go.
Oh, no, it's okay.
You tried surfing,
Yeah.
and was that terrifying that even the thought of doing that, or did you just say, I gotta do it?
I was like, I've always wanted to surf. I love the movie Soul Surfer.
Okay.
And so I was just like, we're in Hawaii, like I have to go surfing. It was our very last day. We were flying home the next day, and it hadn't worked out because the hurricane came. There was a hurricane in Hawaii when we were there, so we couldn't go surfing because our canceled because the hurricane. And I was like, I'm going surfing before we leave. So we made it happen, and yeah, changed my life. I loved it so much.
So kind of interesting because my daughter Lindsay, you know, so when we went to Hawaii, she was determined to go surfing.
Yeah.
Like it's like, what is it? Well, like I don't want to go surfing. Go ahead. You know, like they got sharks up there, don't they? They got so I don't want to do it, but she did it too. She wanted to be out there and do surfing. So
Yeah.
that's interesting because normally she's terrified of water.
Yeah. Did you have a question too?
Yeah. If you don't mind saying, like, what triggered your anxiety?
So I spent a lot of time in therapy trying to figure out what my triggers were because I didn't want to go on meds, and I was like, if I can figure out my triggers, then I can avoid the triggers, work through the triggers, and then be set. And unfortunately, there were never any triggers that I could find. So I think a lot of my anxiety was like, my anxiety was just generalized anxiety, like I was just anxious about everything. And then my panic attacks would just occur on their own when they pleased, however long they pleased. It was not up to me or my environment. There were a couple really random triggers like Swiss Chalet. I remember one session, Dan just put the logo of Swiss Chalet on his computer screen for like the entire hour, and I just had to look at it. Like, that was a thing. Movie theaters, I don't really like, so I still don't go to movie theaters. So I'm deciding whether I decide to like push through that and like expose myself to movie theaters, or if I like can just live without going to movie theaters, which I think is fine. But you know, maybe I'll go to a movie. Yeah, I don't know. There was never anything in particular. It was more just general anxiety about everything and anything, and then mixed in with these random like panic attacks. And then taking the meds sort of just helped everything chill a little bit. Yeah.
Also, I love Taylor Swift too.
She's such a gem. Love it.
Was this such a gem?
Taylor Swift.
Oh yeah, Taylor Swift. Yeah. Any other comments?
How's school?
It's good. It's super busy, but it's really fun. I like it.
She's studying all kinds of stuff, like how the brain works and neurophysiology and
Yeah.
MRIs of the brain and stuff like that. It's
Pretty
really
exciting.
fun stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you've also found at Western
as at many campuses, right? That there's a focus for mental health that you've been very proud of, at
Yeah,
least
that's
at
good.
your school, and
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, that's my mom, that's my dad, so that's why that's why she's just being like, this is what you know. Yeah, that's true. Western and a lot of university and college campuses have really, really good mental health support available, and I feel like every year they're developing more and more, and it's becoming more and more open, and the conversations and the doors are being open to talk about mental health. So I find that super exciting because and when you talk to people, you find out that so many people struggle with the same things. Maybe not everyone is officially diagnosed or like requires as much treatment, and maybe some of us might, but you find out that a lot of people are going through similar things, and campuses have a lot of opportunities available for getting help.
So they're doing a lot more in terms of outreach and seminars and presentations.
Yeah, it's even just from when I started in first year till now, like the amount has just exponentially grown as to how much they're talking about mental health, which is really
I
exciting.
know, like the dons on the floors and residents are more trained to deal with mental
Yeah,
health
so
issues.
like a lot of softs or like
Yeah, softs,
dons
yeah.
are like safe talk trained, so
Right.
they're trained in how to deal with someone in crisis, as well as like there's just tons of opportunities all over campus. They have they have kids help phone, but for like university students.
What is, because I'm not up to date, what's the access, like if somebody wants to get into some counseling on campus, how long does it take?
I haven't tried, but I think like the wait times aren't horrendous, at least not at Western. And then also like if your parents don't have insurance, school has insurance, and then through that, like you would get covered for sessions if you went like off campus. But then there's also like a lot of free drop-in like support groups. Like Western has this like wellness center that's just like drop-in, and you can just go and hang out with people and talk with someone. But it's like super informal. It's just like other students, which is kind of fun too. It's not doesn't feel as overwhelming as like actually going to like speak to a therapist. Yeah.
Are there any therapeutic run groups on
There
Western?
actually is.
Is there?
Yeah, my anatomy prof runs a running group. I have yet to go, but yeah, it's there. If you know.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I was so excited when I heard. She was like, yeah, like we know running can be really good for the brain and for mental health. I was like, go girl.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent. Okay, so thanks again, Laura.
Yeah.
Excellent presentation. Look forward to having you back again
Yep.
in the spring. So, okay guys, so we're gonna go out and do the second gallops tonight.